Joined tonight by the ranking member on the House Budget Committee, that's Democrat Chris Van Hollen, and the House Republican Conference Chairman, Jeb Hensarling. Mr. Van Hollen, at long last, welcome to the Kudlow Report, sir. What is holding up this deal in your judgment?
Well, I think it's pretty clear what's holding up this deal. What's happened is in the House, the Tea Party members of the Republican caucus have pushed the Speaker to continue to move the goalpost time and time again. Just take what happened today. Instead of just trying to pass a clean CR for a few days while we work it out, they decided to try and use it again as a vehicle to impose a social agenda. You heard the lead-in from your guy. He said that they were dealing with the Planned Parenthood issues. Let's get serious about this. The Speaker's asked for an adult conversation. Don't try and use the budget process to impose a social agenda on the country. Let's focus on the important issues right now. Let's get the government on track. It would be very disruptive if there was a government shutdown.
Mr. Hensarling, what's your response?
Well, Larry, House Republicans have passed a bill to keep the government open. We've done it once, we've done it twice, we've done it 3 times. We've yet to see one bill out of the United States Senate. We have now given them almost 7 full weeks to do something. I think it's pretty clear, unfortunately, that they're not interested in keeping the government open. And in fact, the proposal that's on the table now to fully fund the troops, everything that is in this proposal is something they've already agreed to, already voted for, already signed into law. But they won't do it. And what they say is, well, the Republicans have some radical agenda. Here's our radical agenda. In order to create jobs and in order to save our children from bankruptcy, we're trying to put the nation on a sustainable fiscal path. And so we've proposed that we fund the government at 98% of last year's level. Larry, at some point, you got to quit spending money you don't have. And so what the Democrats have said, instead of agreeing to what we can agree on today, working out differences later, frankly, they're using this as a point of leverage. They think that history is on their side, that somehow they can blame Republicans for that, and they're bringing on a shutdown. And it's just wrong. It's just wrong and unfair to the American people, especially our troops in harm's way.
Mr. Van Hollen, a little while ago, Speaker Boehner tweeted, I read the tweet, he supports the troop funding bill. Now, what is in there you object to?
Well, there are a couple things. First of all, and Jeb left it out, again, they decided to insert the whole issue of abortion politics and Planned Parenthood funding in this bill. Now, come on. I don't care what side of that issue you happen to be on as an American citizen. That should not be in a bill when we're dealing with the budget issues that we're facing right now. We can have a debate on that. We can have a separate bill on that. But that was such an obvious, blatant attempt to try and use this as a tool to impose a social agenda. Number 2. If we're really serious about getting the particular cuts and focusing on the deficit reduction, why is it that the Republicans also insist that we do the deficit reduction their way? Cutting funds to education, cutting funds to cancer research. They don't want to get rid of some of the subsidies to the oil companies. They don't want to do anything on that side of the ledger, although from a deficit reduction purpose, you attain the same result. And so that's been the concern here. And finally, and, you know, Jeb knows this very well, the Speaker of the House and Paul Ryan just a few months ago said, we want an additional $32 billion in cuts. The President of the United States just said, we'll do $33 billion of cuts. What happened is that the Tea Party members of the House Republican caucus said, what you, Mr. Speaker, proposed isn't good enough. And until you get the deal we want, we're going to shut down the government. It's as simple as that. I hope they work it out at the White House
But
tonight.
how much, Jeb Hensarling, it's been reported, you tell me if this is right or wrong, that Mr. Boehner's position is now $39 billion, and that Mr. Reed's position over in the Senate is $34.5 billion. So the 39 is the bid, 34.5 is the offer. That seems pretty close, only a few $1 billion away. I mean, I guess I'm asking you, is this resolvable, or do we have to take economic risks for a shutdown?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the Speaker is carrying on these negotiations as we speak. I've spoken with him earlier today, so I'm not going to speak to exactly the status of the negotiations. But I thought it was interesting that Chris said that the Democrats have already put $33 billion on the table. Then the question is, why are they rejecting $22 billion? Now, he brings up other policy matters that are in this bill, but funny, when they were in charge and they had appropriations bills, they always had policy writers, and it just so happens the president has previously signed this into law. And so now they're just using this as a pretext, again, to shut down the government. And if they were serious about it, where have they been for the last 7 weeks? They have yet to pass one single bill in the Senate. And again, here we are as a nation borrowing 42 cents on the dollar, much of it from the Chinese, and sending the bill to our children and grandchildren. We have trillions of dollars of capital sitting on the sidelines that could be used to create more jobs for needy people, but instead, our employers know that ultimately massive quantities of debt created by the Democrats lead to massively high taxes, which ultimately leads to massive unemployment. And that's where we are today. We got to quit spending money we don't have.
Mr. Van Hollen, what are we going to do about the debt bomb? What are you thinking? You're a House Democratic leader. You're a budget man. Everybody's talking about the coming debt bomb that'll wreck the economy. What are we going to do about this?
Yeah, Larry, there's absolutely no doubt that we have to put in place a plan for a predictable, steady reduction in deficits heading toward eliminating the national debt. And we need to do it in a balanced way, as the Bipartisan Fiscal Commission recommended. And what we've seen from our Republican colleagues, and we saw it again yesterday in the Budget Committee as we look toward the 2012 budget, is a totally unbalanced approach. And it's not me just saying that. That's what the co-author of the Bipartisan Fiscal Commission said about the Republican plan, because we all recognize that if you're going to reduce the deficits, you've got to make cuts, serious and sustained cuts, but you also got to deal with the revenue piece. The fact is that the folks at the very, very top of the income scale should have their tax rates go back to where they were during the Clinton administration years when the economy was booming, years when we had big job growth. And Jeb talks about the deficit and debt. When we left the end of the Clinton administration, we had $5.6 trillion surpluses. Those were squandered within 8 years. So, look, the history tells the story there, but looking forward, what we need to do is come together and come up with a sensible plan, not a lopsided plan.
We're flat out of time. Jeb Hensling, I know you want to respond. I got to ask you to do it in about 25 seconds. I apologize. We're flat out of time.
Well, Larry, I just think it's very humorous and laughable that Chris would bring up the Fiscal Responsibility Commission that I served on. The president's Democratic budget has zero of their recommendations contained in it, and yet Chris is citing it as some kind of model. The Republican budget actually contains many of their suggestions. And here's where we are. Under their budget, government is going to double in size, and that means taxes have to double in size. We'll be envious of European tax rates, and we will confine our children to a lower standard of living, and we have got to stop that.
Gentlemen, I apologize.
Larry,
I must leave it there. Congressman Chris Van Hollen, we appreciate your coming on, but I'm flat out of time. Congressman Jeb Hensling, we always appreciate your contribution, but I'm flat out of time. We'll do it again soon. I love both of you. Great stuff.